What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Glad you could make it. Hope you're ready to just kick back and relax, because I've got a whole bunch of wild stories lined up. Seriously, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's get into some of the craziest stuff from Reddit. And hey, if you dig what you see, it would be awesome if you hit that like and subscribe button. It helps a ton, and I appreciate every single one of you. Before I get too long-winded, let's just get right into it. My co-worker knew too much about me, and it took me too long to realize why. I'd never been the type to be paranoid. I'd lived in big cities most of my adult life, taken the subway at 1 a.m, dated off apps, done all the things they tell you not to do on true crime podcasts. I've always felt like I had a pretty good radar for danger. So when I started working at Terry and Holden Accounting, I didn't think twice about my cubicle placement, the guy across from me, or the way he always smiled at me a little too long. I should have. His name was Brent. He worked in payroll. I was in billing. Different departments, different responsibilities, but our cubicles were directly across from each other. The desks were just high enough to cover most of our torsos when we sat, but low enough that our eyes could meet if we both looked up at the same time. And we did. A lot. At first I smiled. I was the new hire after all, and Brent was one of the first to welcome me. He brought me coffee on my third day, said it was just to break the ice. I thought it was nice. A little awkward maybe, but nice. He was soft-spoken, probably mid-30s, with pale skin and oily dark hair that he constantly pushed behind his ears. He always wore the same 3 button-ups and brought tuna salad for lunch. Harmless guy. Quiet. Friendly. Too friendly. It started small. Little comments. Brent would say things like, "Pink suits you," or "That blue dress from last Friday, you should wear that more." I remember pausing the first time he said something like that. It was the "from last Friday" that caught me off guard. I'd only worn that dress once, and it was over a week ago. But maybe he just had a good memory. Then it got weirder. One day, I dropped a paperclip under my desk and had to get on my hands and knees to retrieve it. When I stood up, Brent was staring at me with this expression I still don't have words for. Amused? Satisfied? Then he said, "Red today." Interesting choice. I blinked. "Sorry." He smiled. "Your underwear, I noticed. It's red, right?" I froze. "What?" "I just figured," he said quickly. Red lipstick, red nails. I thought it was a matching kind of day. I forced a laugh. I guess that's a lucky guess. I hadn't worn red lipstick in weeks, and my nails were nude pink. That's when the first crack hit my radar. He hadn't guessed. He'd seen. I kept telling myself maybe it was coincidence. Maybe I was just overthinking things. But the next day, I did a test. I wore all black slacks, black cardigan, black flats. But underneath, I wore a bright neon yellow bra, something I hadn't worn in years, and matching underwear I dug out of the back of my drawer. That afternoon, Brent leaned toward the gap in our cubicle divider and whispered, "Is it lemon drop or sunflower?" I stared at him. "What?" He smiled. "Yellow. I've always wondered what they call that exact shade. It's nice on you." My stomach dropped. I logged off early and left. I started to avoid him after that. I asked my manager if I could work remotely a few days a week, citing transportation issues. She approved it, no problem. Brent didn't seem to mind. Until I came back the next week and found a sticky note on my desk. "Missed seeing you. Mondays are boring without you." I crumpled it and threw it out. The next day there was another one. "Hope you're wearing green. You always do on Wednesdays." But the note shook me. He was watching me on my remote days. I started doing what anyone would do, locking my windows, watching my back, leaving the office for lunch instead of eating in the break room. But the more I tried to get away from him, the more obvious it became. Brent knew things he shouldn't. He knew when I got a new pair of shoes. He knew I bought a weighted blanket. He commented once on how I always took the same route home, even though I never told anyone at work how I commuted. That's when I went to HR. HR was predictably useless. They said they'd have a conversation with Brent, but that he hasn't technically violated any policies. He hadn't touched me. He hadn't emailed me anything inappropriate. He hadn't threatened me. He's just being friendly. The HR rep shrugged. I wanted to scream. Instead, I started documenting every note, every comment. I kept a digital log with timestamps. I even took photos of anything he left on my desk. The only thing I didn't do, overdramatic. Like I couldn't handle a little attention. I'd worked so hard to get this job. I didn't want to be the problem. Until the night my locks stopped working. I live in a pre-war apartment with 2 deadbolts. Reliable, sturdy. I always double-check them before bed. It's a habit. That night was no different. Locked both, checked them twice. Then, at 3:17 a.m., I woke up to a sound. A click. The unmistakable sound of a lock turning. I shot upright. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear. I crept toward the front door and nearly screamed when I saw the top lock, the deadbolt, was unlocked. But the bottom one was still engaged. Someone had tried to get in, and they had a key. I didn't sleep. I called my super in the morning and told him I lost my keys. Asked if anyone had requested a copy recently. No, he said. Just you, me, and the locksmith. I didn't tell him what happened. I just asked him to rekey the entire door, which he did. I also had a smart camera installed in my hallway the same day, one with motion alerts and night vision. That night, I didn't sleep either, but at 2:49 a.m., I got a notification, motion detected at your front door. I opened the app. There was no one there. There had been. On the footage, a man in a grey hoodie approached my door. He crouched. He fiddled with something, maybe a lockpick. But then he noticed the camera. He looked directly at it, then covered his face and turned away. I rewound the footage and paused. I knew those shoes. Brent's disgusting black skeechers with the frayed laces. I took the footage to HR. This time, they took it seriously. They suspended Brent, pending investigation. Security escorted him out. I was told he was deeply apologetic and didn't mean any harm, but he never denied it. He never even explained how he got a key. I moved out that weekend. I left the job the next week. I just couldn't do it anymore. Here's the part that still gives me chills. About a month later, I got an email from a private Gmail account with no name. The subject line just said, "You shouldn't have made me leave." The body of the email was empty, but there was an attachment. I didn't want to open it. I almost deleted it. But I couldn't help myself. The photo was taken from inside a closet, a narrow crack between wooden doors, and through it you could see me, brushing my teeth in my old apartment bathroom. I dropped my phone. I screamed. I called the police. But it didn't matter. The photo had no metadata. No location. No proof of who took it. He was never charged. He never contacted me again. But I never stayed in an apartment with sliding closet doors after that. And Brent, wherever you are, let's not meet again. All right, man. So, this story, this is a special kind of creepy. You know, you hear about people being stalked and all, but to have it happen at your job, in a place that's supposed to be professional and safe, that's just a whole other level. Flow build, you know? The little comments that seem harmless at first, the nice shirts that turns into, "I know what colour your underwear is." It's like a horror movie, where the monster isn't some creature, but just this super unassuming guy in a cubicle. And the way HR just brushes it off at first, that's so real and so frustrating. But then the story just takes it up another notch. When he gets a key to her apartment and the camera catches him, you think that's the end of it, right? But it's not. The fact that he was hiding in her closet, that's the kind of thing that makes your skin crawl. And the last line, "Let's not meet again." Well, it's just, I can't even. You know he's out there somewhere, and that's the most terrifying part of all. What an absolute nightmare. So, what do you guys think? Did this one give you the chills? Hit me up in the comments. I'm going to need a moment to recover from that one, but I've got another story ready to go. Let's get into it. I never told anyone how I ruined someone's life in college. I didn't even mean to. I think about this one night in college more than I think about anything else I've ever done. And I never talk about it. Not to my wife, not to my friends, not even in therapy. And I've been in therapy for 5 years now. But I need to get it out because I'm tired of hearing my own voice saying it in my head. I was 21. It was my last year of college, and for the first time in my life I wasn't struggling. I'd had a weird childhood. Poor, constantly moving, parents who never really parented, and I spent most of high school looking at the ground and hoping no one noticed me. I got into a pretty good state school, moved away, and slowly figured out how to exist. I had friends. I joined a couple clubs. I got invited to things. It was the first time I felt like a person. And then there was Nick. Nick was one of those guys who seemed like he had everything. He was ridiculously smart. Like one of those annoying people who barely studied but got perfect scores anyway, and kind of weird in an endearing way. He'd show up to parties in old cardigans and always carried around this giant beat-up thermos like he was a cartoon hobo. But he was funny. And dry, and way more emotionally intelligent than most people I knew. He listened. I don't think anyone listened to me like he did. We met in a film theory class, sat next to each other and made jokes about how the professor looked like a grumpy muppet. I was surprised he talked to me at all. I wasn't a loser anymore, but I still wasn't one of the shiny people. I was background. But Nick talked to me like we'd known each other for years. He started texting me after class. Then we started studying together. Then watching movies together, then hanging out just because. And yes, I started to like him. Not just in a he's cool way. I mean, really like him. I didn't say anything. I'm bi, but I hadn't come out to most people yet, and I had no idea if he was. He didn't seem interested in anyone, at least, not openly. He was just Nick. Confident, but not cocky. Always looking slightly amused with the world. He made me feel like I was interesting, like I was worth knowing. Then came the night I keep replaying. We were both drunk, not wasted, just loose. We were at this dumb party that neither of us really wanted to be at, and we ended up sitting on the roof of this apartment building talking about nothing and everything. I remember it was cold. He offered me his hoodie. I remember he smelled like dryer sheets and weed. I remember laughing so hard at something he said that I snorted and then tried to pretend I didn't. At some point, I don't even know why, I kissed him. It wasn't a dramatic moment, it wasn't fireworks, it was a short, dumb kiss. He pulled back, he looked confused, maybe a little hurt, but not angry. He said, "Hey, I'm not like that." I panicked. I started apologizing, rambling. Saying I misread things, that I didn't mean to make things weird. He just shook his head and said, "We're good," but he didn't say it like he meant it. We left the party early. He didn't text me the next day. Or the day after that. I kept thinking I'd see him in class and we'd talk, and it would go back to normal. But he stopped coming. He started sitting in the back row when he did. And eventually, he dropped the class entirely. I tried texting a few times. No response. I even emailed him once, like some kind of business person. Nothing. Weeks passed, then months. And then one day, someone in our friend group mentioned offhand that Nick had withdrawn from all his classes, that he'd left campus. Because I was a coward, years later, after I graduated and started working and moved to another city, I tried to look him up. Couldn't find him. No social media. No mutual connections. It was like he'd been erased. Or like he'd erased himself. There's a version of this story I used to tell myself where I didn't really do anything wrong. Where it was just a kiss and we were drunk and things got awkward and he had other stuff going on. But I know better. Not because he told me, but because I can feel it in the pit of my stomach every time I remember his face after I kissed him. He wasn't just confused, he looked violated. Like I'd taken something from him that he wasn't offering. And the part that really kills me, I didn't even try to make it right. I let him disappear. I let my shame win. There's a line between doing something wrong and being a bad person, right? That's what I keep telling myself. But sometimes I wonder if that's just what people like me say to sleep at night. I hope Nick's okay. I hope he found a life that makes sense to him, that he's surrounded by people who see him for who he really is, people who don't mess that up. If I ever saw him again, I'd say I'm sorry, but I doubt I ever will. Man, okay, so this story, that is a heavy one, for real. You can just feel the weight of that guilt in every single word. And that part about doing something wrong versus being a bad person, that hits different. It's so easy to do something in a split second and have it just mess with you for years. And Nick, he sounds like such a good dude, you know? The thermos, the way he just listened, it's just so rough because this person was trying to connect and it went so wrong. Now they're stuck wondering if they were the reason he just vanished. It's just awful. Okay, that's a lot to take in. It really makes you think about all those little moments that can change everything. I think we all need a minute to breathe after that one. Let's check out what's up next. I accidentally became friends with my ex's dad, and now I don't know how to end it without being a dick. So this probably isn't the most dramatic thing ever posted here, and I'm not going to act like it's some huge emotional crisis, but I genuinely don't know what I'm supposed to do about this anymore. It's stupid, and it's my fault, and I feel weirdly guilty about it, but I also just don't have the heart to end it, which is probably part of the problem. Anyway, the short version is, I'm still friends with my ex-girlfriend's dad, and not in a we follow each other on Facebook kind of way. I mean like, we grab beers, we go to minor league baseball games together, he helped me replace the brake pads on my car last month. It's a full-on friendship, and I don't know how to get out of it without looking like the biggest asshole on earth. Here's how it started. I dated this girl, Emily, for about 2 years. We met through a friend of a friend in our city's pretty meh music scene. You know how every town has like 3 indie bands that all sound like a worse version of each other. I was in one of those. She came to a show, we talked, we hit it off. It was that kind of thing where you just sort of slowly become each other's person, without even really having a defining the relationship conversation. She was cool, dry humor, very into books, kind of sarcastic in a way that sometimes made me feel like I was missing a joke. She was smarter than me, honestly, and I don't mean that in a all shucks way. She read actual non-fiction for fun, and I'm over here Googling, is it safe to eat slightly blue chicken? We were good together until we weren't. I don't want to rehash the whole breakup because it's not really the point of the story, but it ended in that way where there's no screaming or cheating or betrayal, just distance. Resentments build up like plaque. You stop texting each other funny stuff. You forget to ask how their day was. You go from sleeping tangled up to sleeping on opposite edges of the bed. Eventually, she sat me down and said very calmly, I don't think this is working anymore. And I nodded and said, yeah, and that was it. A 2-year relationship ended like we were negotiating a roommate transfer. It felt anticlimactic, but also kind of a relief. Like, okay, we're doing the adult thing. We did the usual post-breakup song and dance. Exchanged stuff, said, let's stay friends, didn't actually stay friends. I unfollowed her on Instagram after a few weeks because seeing her get all glowy and hot again immediately after the breakup made me feel like a crusty swamp toad. But there was no big drama, just silence. And then, about a month later, I get a text from an unknown number that just says, hey man, this is Carl, Emily's dad. I think you still have my socket wrench? Which, yes, I did. He let me borrow it, like 3 months earlier, when Emily's car was making a noise, and I offered to check it out. I know just enough about cars to be dangerous. I forgot I still had it. So I texted back and said something like, yeah, sorry about that. Want me to drop it off? He said. Nah, I'm heading your way for something else anyway. Mind if I swing by? So he came by, picked it up, and we ended up chatting for like 45 minutes in my driveway. I offered him a beer because I felt awkward. He said, sure. And the next thing I know, we're talking about the Braves' pitching roster and which grocery store has the worst self-checkout machines. We both agree it's Safeway. I figured that would be it. Just a polite post-breakup loose end. But the next weekend, He texted me again. "Game's on at the bar near you. Want to grab a beer?" And I said yes. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe because I didn't have anything better to do. Maybe because I didn't have a dad growing up and Carl always kind of gave me dad who tries but not in an overbearing way energy. Maybe because I was still weirdly nostalgic for my old life with Emily and he reminded me of it. But it was fun. Like, genuinely fun. He's got this dry humour that sneaks up on you. You'll say something super deadpan like, "This IPA tastes like a pumpkin got bullied," and it won't hit you until 5 seconds later and then you're wheezing. Not all the time, not in a weird obsessive way, just like once every few weeks. Sometimes he'd help me with car stuff, sometimes I'd help him carry something heavy, sometimes we'd just meet for a beer and complain about traffic. We even went to a local hockey game together once, because I had a free ticket and no one else could go. Meanwhile, Emily and I haven't spoken in, I don't even know, a year? A year and a half. I know she moved to Portland. I know she's dating someone else now, a guy with very symmetrical facial hair and a podcast about eco-something. I'm not stalking her, I swear. She just showed up on my suggested Instagram friends recently, and I couldn't help but peek. The problem is, I don't think Carl told her we're still friends. I don't know that, but I can feel it. Never mentions her. Never says anything about how she's doing or what's going on in her life. It's like she doesn't exist. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe it's his way of respecting boundaries, or staying neutral or whatever. But I've started to realize, if she found out, she might be really, really weirded out by it. I mean, I would be. If I found out my ex was still grabbing beers with my dad behind my back, I'd think that was creepy as hell. It'd feel like a betrayal. Or, at the very least, like a violation of the unspoken breakup rules. But the thing is, Carl is kind of the only friend I have left in town. I had a solid group, but they all drifted after the pandemic. Some moved away, some started families, some just kind of evaporated like social fog. I still talk to people, but it's not the same. Carl is consistent. Carl texts back. Carl shows up. I've tried to pull away a few times, slow the texts, say I'm busy, but he always circles back a few weeks later with something like, "Got an extra ticket to a game," or "Need a second opinion on a grill." And every time, I cave. Because I miss him. What am I supposed to do? Sit him down and say, "Hey man, I know we've been friends for 2 years, but I think it's kind of weird and I feel guilty, so we're done?" That feels cruel. Like kicking a puppy because it wandered into the wrong yard. But keeping it going feels dishonest. Or maybe she's been wondering why her dad suddenly got really into hockey and started using slang like mid. I just keep thinking there's going to be a moment where we run into each other at a store or a wedding or God forbid a funeral, and she's going to look at Carl and then look at me and realize we've been hanging out this whole time and her face will just fall. And I'll have no good explanation. I'll just be standing there like a kid who got caught using someone else's toothbrush. I wish someone else would make the decision for me. I wish Carl would get bored of me, or find a new hobby, or suddenly remember that I'm his daughter's ex and ghost me like a normal person. But he doesn't. He just keeps showing up, and I keep letting him. So yeah, that's my dumb little problem. Not world-ending, not life-shattering. Just this weird, sad, tangled knot I can't seem to untie. And I know the longer I leave it, the worse it gets. But I still don't do anything. I just sit there, drink my beer, laugh at his dumb jokes. Pretend I'm not making it worse. Alright, so this story, man, this is just so awkward. I mean, how do you even get into that situation? It's not like the guy's a creep or anything. He's just genuinely friends with his ex's dad. I feel for him because there's no good way out of it. It's either you ghost this dude who's been a good friend to you, or you just keep living this weird double life. And the dad sounds awesome too. He's got great one-liners. That pumpkin got bullied. Thing is a keeper. It's a bummer because the guy seems lonely, and this friendship is clearly a good thing for him. But it's built on this kind of unspoken secret. I just wonder if the dad knows how weird this is. Maybe he's just lonely too and doesn't care. Honestly, I don't know what I'd tell him to do. Alright, let's just move on to the next one. I need something new. I spent a year secretly cleaning my neighbour's porch. Then he moved, and I feel more messed up than I should. I live in a cul-de-sac in a very average suburban neighbourhood. Nothing special. Not a gated community. Not a horror show either. Just lots of beige homes, Amazon packages on porches, and dogs that bark at ghosts. I work from home, graphic design. Mostly medical brochures and restaurant menus, nothing glamorous, and live alone. Well, unless you count my cat, which I do, because she's the only living creature I see most days before noon. I'm not trying to sound all woe is me. I actually like the solitude most of the time. I don't have many friends in town, but I have a decent online circle, and my job doesn't require meetings unless something's on fire. Anyway, this isn't really about me, it's about my neighbour. Or I guess it's about me and my neighbour. And the weird habit I accidentally created, then couldn't stop. There's this house across the street, pale yellow with brown trim, and an older guy lived there. I didn't know his name for a long time. He was probably late 60s, retired. Drove a navy blue Chevy Malibu that I don't think ever moved. I never saw him leave the cul-de-sac, ever. He just sort of existed there, quietly. We never talked, not once. But I'd see him. Every morning, around 7:45, he'd come out onto his porch with this giant white mug, like comically big. I'm convinced it was novelty-sized, sit in a plastic Adirondack chair and just stare out. Sometimes at the sky, sometimes at nothing. He wouldn't be scrolling on a phone or talking on the porch like most people. Just sitting. Drinking his coffee. Still. I'd be in my kitchen across the street, making toast or staring at my laptop. I started noticing how regular he was. Like clockwork. Every day, same time, same chair, same white mug. And after a few weeks of watching from my window like a total creep, I started looking forward to it. His quiet consistency, the slowness of it. Something about it made me feel okay. Then one morning he wasn't there. I figured he slept in. But he didn't come out the next day either. Or the day after that. By day 4, I was irrationally anxious. I kept peeking out my blinds like a cartoon character. It felt weird to care this much, especially since we had literally never spoken, but something about his absence made the world feel off. Like I'd lost the tick in my day's clock. Day 5, I couldn't take it. I walked across the street and rang his bell. No answer. The porch was messy. Not dirty, just messy. Dead leaves in the corners. The mug was still there, but it had tipped over and was resting near the edge. I righted it without thinking. That was all. I walked back home. I found out later that night, thanks to another neighbour I occasionally wave at, that he'd had some kind of minor stroke. He was okay, but he was in the hospital and would probably be moved to assisted living when discharged. I nodded politely, acted appropriately concerned, but internally I was weirdly gutted. Not because we were friends, but because the quiet ritual was gone. And I missed it. A week passed. Then 2. I'd walk to the mailbox and stare at the empty porch. No mug, no man. Just wind and silence. And then I started doing something I didn't tell anyone about. I started cleaning it. I told myself it was just because it looked neglected. And it was, objectively, cobwebs, dust, a rogue bag of lawn seed that had half spilled and gotten wet and moulded over. So one morning, I went over with some paper towels and Windex. I cleaned the railing. I swept the stairs. I wiped down the plastic chair. 10 minutes of pretending to be helpful. I didn't even think anyone saw me. I felt dumb and invasive, like a vigilante housekeeper. But it felt good. I walked back home feeling like I'd put something small and right back into the world. A few days later, I did it again. And then again. Eventually, it became a habit. I started keeping a little porch kit. Under my sink, gloves, wipes, this weird lemon-scented wood polish I'd bought just for the banister. I'd clean on Tuesdays and Fridays right after my second cup of coffee. I tried not to be obvious about it, but I'm sure someone noticed. No one ever said anything. It wasn't like I was doing deep cleaning, just enough to keep it from looking abandoned. I'd even prop the mug up, clean the dust off of it, and place it back in the same spot. The chair too. I'd angle it a little bit toward the street, toward me. Looking back, yeah, I know. That's probably when it crossed into the territory of weird, but I swear it didn't feel weird at the time. It felt comforting, like I was preserving something. Then one morning, I saw a moving truck, just parked right in front of the house. Big, loud, uninvited. I stood at my window for over an hour, just watching. Eventually I saw a younger man come out, maybe in his late 30s, and start moving boxes. Later, 2 more guys joined. It wasn't professional movers, just family or friends, I think. The energy was rushed. No talking. Just the sound of taped boxes and heavy steps on wooden floors. I went out to check the mail and accidentally lingered on the sidewalk for a while. The younger guy looked at me. He didn't wave back, and just like that, by the end of the day, everything was gone. The chair, the mug, the porch. Empty. Clean, in a weirdly sterile way, like a hotel room after checkout. That was about 3 months ago. Not in a big, dramatic, falling apart way. Just in a dull, low, humming way. Like I'm missing a tooth I didn't know was loose. Like I accidentally closed a tab that had been keeping my brain in balance. I know it sounds stupid. He wasn't my friend. He wasn't even my neighbor. Not really. We never spoke. I don't know his name. But that porch, that morning routine, that became something. Something I didn't even know I needed. Now my mornings feel too quiet. Not in a peaceful way. Like something important isn't happening and no one even noticed. I still look at that house every day. The new owners haven't moved in yet, or if they have, they're ghosts. No lights. No furniture on the porch. Just blank windows and a for sale sign that never got taken down. And sometimes, when I can't sleep, I think about how absurd it all is. That I spent a year quietly tending to a porch for a man who never knew. That it meant something to me. That I miss it. I don't really know what this post is. I'm not grieving him exactly. I'm grieving a routine. A small shared moment that was never actually shared. Is that stupid? Probably. But there it is. Anyway, thanks for reading if you did. Man, this story is just wild. It's so sad and lonely in a way you don't expect. You know, you hear about people being lonely, but this guy found this whole secret ritual that just became part of his life. Cleaning a porch for a stranger for a whole year. That's just next level. And the guy who lived there, he had no idea. It's like this whole secret relationship that only one person was in. It really makes you think about all those little things that you don't even realize are holding your world together. When that anchor is gone, it just leaves a huge hole. It's not about the person, it's about the routine and the little bit of connection that you had, even if it wasn't real. That one got me feeling some kind of way. I've got another story ready to go. Let's get into it. I accidentally became my boss's life coach, and now I can't quit. This is going to sound fake, or exaggerated, or like a screenplay, but I swear on whatever is sacred to you. For me, it's the flavor dust at the bottom of a Doritos bag that this is real, and it's currently happening, and I don't know how to get out of it without ruining my life. Or at least my rent situation. I 31F work for a tech startup in a people operations role, which is just a fun modern way of saying HR admin and office snacks wrangler. It's not glamorous, it's not even that interesting. I process invoices, send out Zoom links, and restock the LaCroix fridge. He's one of those executives who wears sneakers with suits and says, "Let's jam," instead of "let's talk." He's also the kind of guy who schedules 7:30 AM meetings, and then shows up 11 minutes late with an oat milk cortado and zero acknowledgement. That's 7:30 is not a real time for human interaction. He is chaos. Expensive chaos. I've always kept a healthy distance. I say, "Good morning." I laughed politely at his metaphors. He once described server latency as like a raccoon stuck in a funnel. And I never ever make eye contact when he's pacing, because he will pull you into a tangent about vision. But 2 months ago, everything changed. It started with an accident, a real one. I was trying to fix the office printer, a Sisyphean task, and leaned against his desk to reach the back cable. I knocked over a photo frame. Glass everywhere. I apologized like I broke a Fabergé egg. He waved it off and said, "That picture was ancient. I don't even talk to my kid anymore." Which, what? I didn't know what to say, so I muttered, "Sorry to hear that," and tried to clean up the shards with a damp paper towel. But something shifted. He looked at me, really looked, and said, "It's fine. He hates me. I probably deserve it." And I just stood there, holding a paper towel full of glass. While my boss, a man who once told the entire company that crying was a distraction from forward momentum, stared into the middle distance like he was in a war flashback, I should have walked away. I should have made a joke, but I froze and said, "That sounds really hard," which was apparently the emotional bat signal he needed, because ever since that day he will not stop confiding in me. It started small. "Do you think I'm too intense in meetings? Be honest, do people like me?" Then it snowballed. My wife says I don't connect emotionally. I started saying things like, "Oh, I'm probably not the best person to ask," or "That sounds like something to talk to a therapist about." But he'd just nod thoughtfully and say, "Interesting. So you're saying I need to do the internal work?" No. Autumn. No, I'm saying talk to literally anyone else. But I didn't say that, because I need this job, because I'm conflict avoidant, because I once said "you too" to a barista who told me to enjoy my coffee and thought about it for 3 weeks. I don't have the spine to tell a C-suite executive to go trauma dump elsewhere. So now, he sends me late-night Slack messages with articles titled "Why Men Struggle to Feel" and "The Silent Epidemic of Male Loneliness." He asks me to gut-check his apology texts to his wife. He told me he's thinking of trying ketamine therapy and asked if I've ever been inside my own psyche under supervision. I'm tired. It's like having a Tamagotchi. But instead of feeding it, I have to manage the crumbling masculinity of a middle-aged millionaire. I can't quit because I don't want to blow up my health insurance. I don't want to lose my salary. But also, and I hate this, part of me feels bad for him. I know he's my boss, and I don't owe him emotional labor and all that. But when he says things like, "I don't think I've ever had a real friend," and then stares at me like I'm supposed to fix it with my people ops powers, I feel like a sociopath if I shrug and walk away. My friends say I should report him to HR, but I am HR, which is ironic. Also, this isn't a Me Too situation. He's not hitting on me. It's not sexual. It's way weirder. He's not trying to date me. He's trying to bond with me. Like I'm the first person who's ever looked him in the eye and said, "Hey, sounds like your dad sucked." Maybe I am. Which makes me wonder how many people in corporate America are just emotionally constipated men screaming into the void and hoping their assistant knows Jungian archetypes. Here's where it really jumped the shark, though. Last Thursday, I walked into our one-on-one and he had a whiteboard filled with phrases like radical empathy, safe spaces, and dad wound, with 3 question marks. I sat down. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I want you to help me become the kind of man my son would respect." I laughed. He didn't. He said, "I'm serious. I think this is your zone of genius." I said, "I do payroll." He said, "Exactly. You understand how systems work." Then he handed me a legal pad with a list titled Character Development Objectives, like he's a Marvel anti-hero going through his redemption arc. And here's the worst part. The absolute worst part. I helped him. I gave him feedback. I told him not to send his son a 900-word apology email with the subject line, bridging the chasm. I suggested maybe a phone call instead. I recommended a therapist I'd seen 3 years ago, who I now deeply regret recommending, because I found out he actually made an appointment. I'm not just part of the problem, I am the problem. The other day he brought me a matcha latte. He remembered my order and said, "You're like the daughter I never had." And I wanted to scream into a recycling bin, because I didn't ask for this. I knocked over a picture frame, and now I'm Daniel's emotional life raft. I thought about quitting, but then I imagined the exit interview. Him asking, was it something I said? And me going, no, it's just everything. So, yeah, that's my life right now. I spend my mornings rescheduling meetings and my afternoons decoding text messages to Daniel's estranged son. I live in fear that someone's going to walk past the conference room and see me saying, "Have you ever considered writing a letter you don't send?" Anyway, thanks for listening. I feel like I just screamed into a pillow made of keyboards. Oh my god. No way this is a real thing. That is the most insane and hilarious and deeply unsettling story I have ever heard. I mean, the dad wound? Whiteboard alone should be in a museum of modern cringe. And the fact that the narrator is literally HR for their own boss? It's a tragic comedy. You know, you feel bad for the boss, but you feel so much worse for the person who just wanted to restock LaQuart and got pulled into a redemption arc. I would have died. Just died on the spot. I need a minute to process that one. I can't even. Okay, I have another story ready for us, but I don't know if anything is going to top that. Let's get into it. I once paid a stranger's electric bill without telling them. I've thought about it every week since. I don't post here much. Hell, I don't even know if I'm doing this right. My niece showed me how to use Reddit a few months ago when I got bored of playing solitaire on my laptop. She said I'd like this place because it's like eavesdropping on people at the grocery store. And I guess she's right. I've read a lot of wild stories on here. Mine isn't wild. No one gets arrested. Nothing explodes. It's just something I did a long time ago that I've never told anyone about. And for some reason, tonight feels like a good time to finally say it out loud. This happened back in 1997. I was 38, working for the electric co-op in a rural patch of Tennessee. I wasn't a lineman or anything cool like that. I was in the billing department, mostly answering phones, logging payments, and typing up shoot-off notices. The kind of job you don't think about until you need to call someone and scream at them for your power being out. I'd been working there about 5 years at that point. Lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment above the post office. My wife and I had split a few years before, and I never remarried. She took the dog when she left, which was probably fair since he liked her more anyway. I didn't mind the quiet. I had a routine. Black coffee every morning. Same turkey sandwich every lunch. I wasn't depressed or anything. I just liked things simple. Anyway, part of my job involved dealing with non-pays. That's what we called them in the system. People who were past due, usually by a month or two, sometimes more. If you've ever been in that boat, I'm sorry. It sucks. There's a process for it. We'd send warning letters, then reminder calls, and finally a final notice with the shut-off date. If they didn't pay by then, we put in the order to cut service. Usually a field tech would go out and flip the breaker at the meter. I hated that part of the job. Still do, even though I haven't worked there in years. Not because I got yelled at, although I did, a lot, but because sometimes people just needed a damn break. And the policy didn't care. It was binary, pay or don't. Lights on or lights off. No room for context. No room for my kids sick or my car broke down. One afternoon in early November, I got a call from a woman named Mandy. I remember her voice more than anything. Tired, polite, almost too polite, like she'd been rehearsing how to ask for something without sounding like she was asking. She said she'd just gotten the final notice and wanted to see if there was anything she could do. I pulled up her account. She was 3 months behind. $137 and change, shoot-off scheduled for the next day. I gave her the usual spiel. Payment arrangements, deposits, deadlines. She didn't interrupt, just kept saying, "I understand, I'm sorry." She never once got angry, which honestly made me feel worse. Then, right before she hung up, she said, "My daughter's afraid of the dark. I'll figure something out." Thank you. I stared at the phone for a long time after she hung up. Something about that line stuck to me. Not in a manipulative way. She didn't say it to guilt me, she just said it like it was a fact. Like she was already working out what candlelight would cost her. I checked her address, a trailer off a county road I knew well. The kind of place where you pass 5 empty fields to get there. No close neighbours, no street lights. I thought about it all night. I couldn't shake it. $137 isn't a small amount when you're broke, but it's not a huge amount either. I had the money, I didn't have kids, didn't have debt. Hell, I didn't even have cable. The next morning, I got to work an hour early, went into the system, found her account, and I paid it. I used cash. We had this janky little payment drop box by the front door, and I just filled out a blank slip with her name and account number. Slid the money in, marked it anonymous. Her balance cleared. The shutoff was cancelled. That was it. Heroic, maybe, but mostly I just felt weird. Like I'd stepped into someone's story without asking. Like I'd moved the furniture in a house that wasn't mine. She called again later that week. Said she didn't know what happened, but her balance was showing paid. She thought maybe the system glitched. I said, "That happens sometimes." Which wasn't a lie, technically. Our system was garbage. She sounded relieved, said thank you again. Asked if there was a way to find out who had paid it in case it was her sister. I told her we couldn't release that information and that she might want to just consider it a gift. She got quiet for a second, then said, "Well, if anyone asks, tell them it saved my kid from a scary night." And that was that. She stayed current on her bill after that. For the rest of the time I worked there anyway. I checked her account sometimes, just to see. She always paid on time after that. Always within a day of the due date. Always in person at the front counter. I never told anyone what I did. Not my co-workers, not my boss. Not even my sister, who I talked to every Sunday. It didn't feel like something to brag about. It still doesn't. But I think about it all the time. Not because I want credit, but because I've never been sure if it was the right thing to do. Maybe I crossed a line. Maybe I was just trying to feel like a good person for once. Maybe I should have called a church or a food bank and told them about her. I don't know. I just know that for one night, in one little trailer in Tennessee, a little girl slept with the lights on. And maybe that mattered. Maybe it didn't. But I think it did. Anyway, that's all. Not really a confession, just a thing I did that I never said out loud. Until now. Thanks for reading. You know, this is the kind of story that just hits you in the chest. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's just so human. I think what gets me the most is how simple it was. He just paid a bill. But the impact of that, for him and for that family, was so much bigger than $137. The narrator's quiet guilt about it, that's what makes it feel so real. He keeps asking if it was the right thing to do, if he should have done something else. But you can feel in your gut that he did exactly what he was supposed to. He saved that little girl from a scary night. It's those small, simple acts of kindness that really stick with you, whether you're giving them or getting them. That's a story I'm going to be thinking about for a while. Okay, that one got me. I've got another story ready to go. I live with 2 roommates. One of them has no idea I hate him. The other knows everything. So before I get into this, let me just clarify. I'm not a violent person, not even confrontational. I'm the guy who says, no worries if not, in work emails, even when there are very much worries. But I'm reaching some kind of emotional boiling point and I think the steam is leaking into my ears. So I need to just dump this somewhere, and I guess the void of Reddit will do. Okay, I live with 2 roommates. Let's call them Alex and Rob. Alex is my best friend. We met in college, bonded over a mutual hatred of cafeteria eggs, and basically haven't gone more than a week without talking since. Rob is Rob. He was a friend of a friend, needed a place when we were looking for a third, seemed chill enough and moved in about a year ago. I did not hate Rob when he moved in. He seemed fine, neutral, regular. Wore socks with Birkenstocks, but otherwise seemed like a typical dude in his late 20s trying to not die and maybe open a crypto wallet or something. The hate crept in like black mold. He always left just one dish in the sink, not like a pile. One dish, every time. Like a little greasy monument to apathy. Then it was his laundry. He'd leave it in the dryer for literal days. I once took it out after 72 hours and he got offended. Like I'd touched his sacred underpants. Still, fine, people are people. I wasn't going to start a war over lint. Then it got weirder. He started having nighttime smoothies. Yeah, smoothies with a blender. At 1 o'clock a.m. every single night. It sounded like he was running a wood chipper full of bananas and regret. I confronted him, gently, I swear, and he looked genuinely confused and said, "I thought it was quieter at night." What? But the thing that fully pushed me into unhinged territory was the humming. Rob hums. All the time. He hums when he's brushing his teeth, when he's making toast, when he's scrolling TikTok. Not songs. Just tuneless, creepy old man from a horror movie humming. And he paces. In the living room. At night. So imagine this. I'm trying to sleep. It's midnight. I hear blender noises, then silence, then creaking floorboards, then because there's always a twist. Alex, my best friend, he loves Rob, thinks he's hilarious, thinks the humming is quirky, defends him constantly. If I vent, Alex turns into Rob's attorney. He's just high-strung. He's got insomnia. He's an only child. Maybe he was raised different. He's sensitive to criticism. I don't care if he was raised by wolves, Alex. He doesn't get to do jazz mouth sounds at 1 a.m. But the problem is, I haven't told Rob any of this. Not directly. Not fully. And now it's too late. Now it would be a nuclear detonation. I've let this fester for a year. A full year. I've smiled through it. Nodded when he told me about his hot yoga journey. Laughed when he showed me memes. Hell, I made him a birthday card. But internally, I'm losing my mind. I am walking around the apartment like a man haunted. The blender sound gives me PTSD. Every time he says, "Bro," my soul withers. I once saw his bare foot on the coffee table and had to physically leave the room before I threw my own spine into traffic. I talk shit about him to Alex constantly. Not just a little. It's become our shared hobby. A kind of emotional bonding activity. We'll text each other from across the room while Rob is monologuing about ketones or whatever. We'll meme about his emotionally nutritious meals. He said that phrase out loud one time. It's not healthy. We know it's not healthy. But it's been the only way to survive. Until recently. Because now Rob is starting to think I'm his friend. He started asking me to hang out one-on-one. Inviting me to coffee. Offering to teach me about crypto. No thanks. He gave me a whole book he thought I'd like. Annotated it. Said it reminded him of me. I don't even know what that means. He told me the other day, "I feel like we've really clicked lately." Reader, I almost screamed into the sink. But now I'm trapped. I've let the facade go on too long. If I suddenly snap and tell him the truth, that I can't stand him, that I fantasize about relocating his Vitamix into the ocean, that I think he's the human version of a shrug, I will look like an unhinged monster. Alex will be pissed. Rob will be crushed. Our lease isn't up for 6 months. So I do nothing. I avoid. I aggressively turn the volume up when he starts humming. I go for long walks. I text Alex. I can't believe he's doing the thing again, while sitting on the other side of the couch. Sometimes I think about just leaving. Moving out without warning like an angry spirit. But mostly I just spiral. I don't know if I'm the asshole. I really don't. Maybe I am. Maybe I've invented a villain because I'm too repressed to have a real conversation. Maybe Rob is just weird and not bad, and I'm emotionally constipated and scared of conflict. Or maybe I've accidentally let myself get gaslit by a humming smoothie goblin and I need to get out before I lose my mind completely. I don't know. I just needed to put it somewhere. So, if anyone wants a slightly used roommate with strong opinions on Himalayan salt lamps and a mysterious knee routine, let me know. No, dude, are you kidding me? This is a whole nightmare. I can't even imagine living with a guy who makes smoothies at 1 a.m. and hums all the time. The humming alone would send me over the edge. And the fact that your best friend Alex thinks it's all quirky. That's the real betrayal. You're supposed to have a secret partner in crime for this kind of thing, not someone who is defending the humming goblin. Your passive-aggressive texting from across the couch is so relatable. You are not the bad guy here. You're just a normal person who has had their personal space and sanity violated by a guy who wears Birkenstocks with socks. Not a lot to ask. The part where he gives you the annotated book and says you clicked. Who would have just screamed right then and there? What a nightmare. Do you not know how you are going to make it 6 more months? Okay. I need to find a new story to read because that one got my blood pressure up. Let's find something a little less unhinged. I told a lie 12 years ago that no one ever found out about. But now I can't stop thinking about it. I'm not really sure who this post is for. I don't even know how I ended up here tonight. I was just scrolling on my phone in bed, trying to fall asleep, when I saw a post with a headline that made my chest tighten. Something about the lie that stuck. And I just clicked. And now I've read half a dozen stories from strangers, and suddenly I feel like maybe I could tell mine too. This happened 12 years ago. I haven't told anyone, not even my husband. It's not illegal or scandalous, nothing like that. But it was a turning point. A fork in the road that I chose without fully understanding why. And then I lived with it like it was normal. For context, I'm 52 now. I've been married to the same man for 27 years. We have 2 kids, one in college, one in grad school. We live in upstate New York. Nothing fancy, just a house with a slanted porch and too many bird feeders. My life is good. It's steady. It's the kind of life I used to envy in other people when I was younger. But before all that, before PTA meetings and Costco memberships and trying to figure out how many cups of water plants really need, I was someone else. Or maybe not someone else, but someone less. Finalized. Back then I worked at a local preschool. Just 2 classrooms, one for toddlers and one for the 3-5 age range. I was the lead teacher in the older group, and I loved it. I really did. I liked the glue stick chaos, the way kids say things like, I have elbows on my knees with total confidence. I liked the routine. I liked being the safe person for little humans, still learning how to be in the world. There was one little girl in my class that year. Her name was Grace. She had big brown eyes and an overbite that made her look permanently curious. She was quiet, sweet, always drawing. Always had a crayon in her hand, even during snack. Her mum was a single parent, always rushing in and out, always apologizing. She had that tired but doing her best look that I recognized immediately. Anyway, every year we did these little My Family projects with the kids. You've probably seen them. Paper cutouts of houses, stick figures, pets with weird names like Cheese Toast. We'd hang them up in the hallway. The kids loved showing them off during pickup. One day, Grace brought hers in. She'd drawn herself, her mum, and a little boy named Tommy, holding hands, smiling. But there was no Tommy in her family file, no brother, no cousin, just Grace and her mum. When I asked her who Tommy was, she said, "He lives in the red house." That's all. I figured it was a friend, or a neighbour, or a cousin she saw sometimes. Kids make up stuff all the time. One girl once told me her dad was an astronaut. He worked at Home Depot. But over the next few weeks she started talking about Tommy a lot. Not in a silly way. In a matter-of-fact, everyday way. She said he helped her tie her shoes. That he liked peanut butter. That he got sad when it rained. One day she came in with a little toy car, red, plastic, probably from a vending machine, and said it was Tommy's, that he let her borrow it. She kept it in her cubby. Still, I didn't think much of it. We let kids have their little internal worlds. It's part of the job. Then one day, her mom came in early for pickup. I happened to be near Grace's cubby, and the toy car was sitting on the shelf. Her mom picked it up, looked at it strangely, and said, "Where'd this come from?" Grace said, "Tommy gave it to me." Her mom looked confused. "Tommy who?" And Grace said, "Tommy from the red house." Her mom blinked. "What red house?" And Grace, I'll never forget this, looked down and said, "The one that's not there anymore." That made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. After they left, I looked out the window. You could see the road from our building, and across the street, sure enough, there was a plot of land with a torn-down house. It had been empty for months. The city condemned it after a gas leak or something. I remembered because the house used to have this huge red door that stuck out. I went home at night, feeling weird. Not scared exactly, just off kilter. Like I'd missed something important. Like I'd accidentally walked into the middle of a story. The next day, I asked Grace more about Tommy. Does he go to school? No. Does he live with his mom? No. Does he talk to anyone else? No. How did you meet him? She shrugged. He was waiting. For what? I asked. To be picked up. Now listen, I'm not someone who believes in ghosts. I don't own crystals. I don't watch those ghost hunting shows where people scream at night vision cameras. But something about the way she said that made me feel cold. Like there was air between the words. Still, I didn't say anything. Not to the director. Not to the mom. Not even to my husband. I told myself it was a phase. That she'd stop talking about him eventually. Kids grow out of imaginary friends. But she didn't. Not for weeks. She started making drawings of him, saying things like, "Tommy says not to go near the fence." Saying he didn't like when people talked about moving. Saying he missed his dog. I didn't know what to do. It wasn't hurting anyone, and she wasn't scared. She was just loyal to him, like he was real. So I started writing it all down. Notes, just for me. A little folder I kept in my desk, just in case. One day, Grace didn't show up. Then 2 days. Then a week. Her mom called and said she had to move suddenly. A job offer out of state. She said sorry for the short notice, asked for her paperwork, thanked us for everything. I asked how Grace was doing. She said, "Good. She's just sad to leave her friend." I almost asked. I almost said, "You mean Tommy?" But I didn't. I just said, "Tell her we'll miss her." And that was it. She left. I never saw her again. Now here's the part I've never told anyone. After they moved, I went to the red house. The one that wasn't there anymore. It was just an empty lot by then. Some orange tape. A chain link fence. Weeds growing up where the porch had been. I parked across the street and sat in my car like a coward. Then I saw the toy car. Sitting on the sidewalk. Right by the curb. Lead plastic scuffed up like someone had dropped it. I picked it up and put it in my coat pocket. It's still in my closet. In an old jewellery box with no jewellery in it. I check it sometimes, just to see if it's still there. It always is. I never told anyone about Grace's drawings, about her stories, about Tommy. And I never told anyone about the last thing she said to me. On her last day, right before they left, she hugged me and whispered, "He said thank you." That's it. I know how this sounds. I know it's not dramatic. No twist. Just a little girl, a maybe imaginary friend, and a woman who didn't ask too many questions. But I think about it more than I should. I think about whether there really was a Tommy. And if there was, who he was waiting for. And if she ever told anyone else about him. And whether I should have done more. I told myself it was just a story. But part of me wonders what it means that I still have the car, that I never threw it away, that I still remember the drawings, and the quiet way she said his name. This is the kind of story that's going to stick with me for a while. Not in a jump scare way, but in a way that just settles in your bones. The little girl saying he was waiting to be picked up. The fact that the house wasn't even there anymore. That's so unsettling. And the toy car. The narrator still has the car. That's the part that gets you. It proves it wasn't just a story she told herself. It was a real, quiet, unsettlingly real thing. There's no screaming or anything, just a kid and a quiet ghost. That one got me. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. Let's see if the next one can top it. Man, that last one just sits with you in a way that is hard to shake. It was not a huge fight or a dramatic breakup. It was just a quiet kind of loss. And I think that's why it hits so hard. The narrator found this one person who made them feel visible, and they just wanted to hold on to that feeling so badly. It is a reminder that some of the deepest hurts are not the loud ones. They are the ones that just fade into silence. That is a good place to leave it for tonight. I appreciate you all for hanging out with me and sharing some of these stories. Some were wild, some were funny, and some just made you stop and think. Thank you for listening. Seriously. I hope you have a good night. We'll be back next time with more.